Welcome, everybody, to Living the Empowered Life podcast. My name is Yvonne. It's been a long time. I'm back now from my little break. This is episode 87 of the podcast. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm an empowerment coach, trainer, author. And what I like to do on this podcast is to share things with you that help you to live an empowered life. So I'd like to introduce you today to my guest, Samantha Kaaua. And she is joining us all the way from Hawaii, if I'm right.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so what time is it over there, Samantha?
A little after 9 p.m.
Wow. Okay, so over here it's just hit 8 o'clock in the morning in the UK. I
Yeah.
know I have listeners that listen from different places around the world. It is now coming up to about 8:15, and the weather over here is absolutely boiling. We've been told today the weather is going to be the hottest for quite a while now. It's going to be 30 degrees today. So I'm glad that Samantha has agreed to do the interview at this time, because I probably would be boiling in my office.
Oh my goodness. Yes, that's hot.
Yeah, it's definitely hot. So I'll tell you a little bit about Samantha, and then we're going to get into the interview. So Samantha is a beacon of hope in the realm of marriage coaching. She has penned a book that is not just a guide, but a testament to personal triumph. Drawing from her own journey of marital strife and near divorce, Samantha's inner Mosaic method provides profound insights and practical strategies for fostering love, trust, and understanding within relationships. Through her triple A's of transformation, we will embark on a journey of self-discovery, learning to embrace vulnerabilities, trust intuition, and cultivate forgiveness. So without further ado, I'm just going to introduce Samantha. Hi, Samantha.
Hello, thank you for having me.
No worries. Thank you, Samantha, for joining me. The reason I wanted to have Samantha on the show today, because as part of living the empowered life, relationships often form an important part of being able to live an empowered life. And if you're in a relationship, it doesn't matter if it's a romantic relationship or a friendship. Sometimes if those relationships are not working well, living an empowered life can be quite difficult. But I wanted to invite her on today specifically to talk about relationships. And I'm looking forward to Samantha sharing with us some of her insights. So first of all, Samantha, I did see that you are a fellow TEDx speaker.
I am, yes.
Yes, I watched your TEDx and I thought it was really good.
Thank you.
I have myself done a TEDx talk over here. I've done it in 2017. So it's been quite a
Oh,
few
wow.
years since I've done
Yes,
mine. So that was a nice surprise, actually, to see that, you've done a TEDx talk as well, and it was really good. So
thank you.
first question I want to ask you is, what inspired you to write Finding Beauty in Your Broken Pieces?
Oh, thank you for that question. It really began as my life story.
Okay.
Um, as a product of divorce. My parents were divorced, my grandparents were divorced, and um that was what I knew. And as a little girl, I swore that I would never get divorced when I got older. And then, of course, I married my high school sweetheart, and 7 years later, we were on the brink of divorce. And Finding Beauty in Your Broken Pieces, and the subtitle of my book is called The Art and Science of Transforming Any Relationship. So the basis of the book is my journey in transforming my own marriage, when marriage therapy failed us, when all the traditional ways that we were told to work through things didn't work. I was also a marriage and family therapist, graduating with my master's degree at that time, and all the things that I thought were supposed to work didn't. So I talk about my story, but I also talk about different stories of the people that I've supported in transforming their marriage when one partner wasn't quite willing to do the work yet. And that was the situation with my husband. But we were able to completely transform our marriage and We are still happily married to today, and we just celebrated our 12-year wedding anniversary.
Oh,
So
wow, that's amazing.
this month. So
Really? Oh my
yes,
gosh. No, that is absolutely amazing. That is a
thank
long
you.
time. I know how that feels.
Yes, yeah, 18 years together, 12
Yeah.
years married. Yes.
Wow. Well, that is definitely an achievement. I'm coming up to 19 years married in a couple of weeks'
Wow,
time.
congratulations. Oh, nice. Both
Yes.
in June. We got married in June.
Oh, mine's in July, sorry.
Oh, in
July,
July. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
July the 23rd.
Oh, awesome. Our daughter was born in July. Our oldest daughter was
Yeah.
July 4th. So nice.
Wow.
Very close. Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter was born in July as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so lots there in common.
Yes.
So you mentioned a little bit about, how your parents got divorced.
Yes.
Would you say as a child that had a profound effect on you and how you saw relationships?
I wouldn't have known that it made an impact on me until later in life
Okay.
because they were divorced they were separated before I was 1. They were divorced before I think I was 3. So I actually didn't know what it was like to have two parents
Yeah.
uh for in my childhood until my mom got remarried. And then my dad got remarried as well. So it did have a really strong impact in knowing that I was being raised by a single mom.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I do look back and I have a lot of gratitude for them because they didn't raise me in a household where they were constantly fighting and they were always angry at one another. So, in that sense, I was really grateful for them
Yeah.
choosing what they chose. So yeah, it's interesting because I swore I would never get divorced, but it wasn't because I had such a horrible experience of them being separated. It was
Yeah.
more of the longing of having two parents and wanting
Yeah.
that for my children instead of only knowing what one parent was like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And you're very right
Wow.
in saying, that longing for being in a two-parent household. That was something I definitely felt was, especially with my older daughter, was something that
Right.
was definitely, it was something of an issue for her, I think. But all the
Yeah.
things that you said there about, the arguing and stuff, unfortunately, she got to hear some of that, obviously being a young parent, both of us being young and things like that.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's really good that you didn't have those experiences, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so amazing. We have so many parallels. Actually, my
Mm,
husband, at the time we had our first daughter, he was 17 and I had just turned 18. So we were teen parents as well. Right out
yeah,
of high school, we had her. And so yeah, it was very challenging. And she did see us argue. She did see us fight. Um, so she had a completely different experience than I did. And at the same time, she also got to see us like work through that. So it
yeah,
was, yeah. And whether we work through it and stay together or work through it and amicably separate, right? And we complete the relationship. That really is the goal when I work with my couples is it's not that they have to stay married. I'm not in the space to guilt and shame anyone for
yeah.
not staying together. It's more along the lines of wanting there to be this peaceful completion versus this resentful and angry separation.
Do you use that method, your inner Mosaic method, for couples who are not married as well? Do you get
Yeah, the
couples
inner
come to
mosaic.
you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes. So I do work with couples that aren't married that are in a committed relationship. That's
yeah,
normally my requirement is that they're in a relationship that they're really committed to, whether that they have children or they've been together for years.
yeah,
That normally is what I require. The inner mosaic method actually works. It's not just for relationships.
yeah,
Like intimate relationships, it's a model to help an individual understand all the different parts of themselves so that
yeah,
they can walk in trust in all of their relationships. Because
yeah,
I believe that ultimately, when we learn how to love and trust all parts of ourselves, we have this compass that can guide us in any situation and in any relationship. So
Yeah,
that's really how I support the people I work with.
that sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
And can you tell us more about how it differs from your inner Mosaic method? Can you tell us more about how it differs from traditional relationship advice?
Yes. It one of the things that I'm known to say is it only takes one person to transform a relationship. And that's so counter to what most of our cultures teach, right? They teach that it takes two, that both partners need to be ready and willing to do their part for it to work. And I bumped up against a situation where my husband wasn't ready to do the work. He's doing the work now, but
Yeah,
he wasn't ready then.
yeah,
And the inner mosaic method is, again, it's really just to help an individual learn how to navigate their inner triggers, their right. It really is. I love that your podcast is about empowerment, because it really is an empowerment tool.
yeah,
That's really what I created it to be. It's a model that helps people feel so empowered that they show up with confidence, and all that fears and the mistrust and the betrayal just fades away. And their true essence shows up in the relationship, and that changes everything.
yeah,
And so it's different because my model is based on, there's a lot of psychology. My background, right, is in marriage and family therapy, so I do have a lot of psychology background, and it can look similar to inner child work.
yeah,
However, there are some distinctions there where we don't do the work on reparenting the child, the inner child. We really acknowledge that part of ourselves, and we also acknowledge that that part is here with us in this moment, and we support that part in the current situation versus in the past trauma.
yeah,
So it is it's a model that I accumulated all different wisdoms from different methods and different theories, but it really is the individual work to influence the relationship.
wow. Because
Yeah.
listening to that, you know, some people might say, I mean, I can just speak for myself being in a relationship for a long time. One
Yeah.
of the things, you know, we were told really early on in our marriage, is that it takes two to make the relationship work. It takes two to do the work.
Yeah.
Because I think as a sign to the other person, like for me, for example, you've got to want to do the work as well. You know, because if I'm the
Right.
one making the appointments and I'm the one leading everything and doing all that stuff, to me, it would seem like you're not as committed to wanting to solve our relationship issues, because
Mm-hmm.
that is how the other person could see it, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And what most people don't understand is the law of systems.
Right.
So, how that works is if you change one part of a system, take an ecosystem, for example, there's an extinction of a species. And if that change happens within that ecosystem, the rest of the system must and will adapt to that change. A relationship with two people is also a system. So when you change in a way that creates a new homeostatic state, it creates this new pattern in your relationship. Your partner must and will adapt and change. Whether that
Mm.
leads to a natural completion in your relationship or the evolution of your relationship, it really is up to the other person. So it's up to
Yeah,
them eventually to choose, and up to you if the other person would like to evolve with you.
yeah,
But the thing is that you alone can evoke change in the relationship. And that's something new. And no one is telling people, right? They're saying it takes two, and both parties have to be willing. And that's not 100% true. My husband was stuck in his addiction. He was stuck in depression. Whether
Yeah.
he wanted to or not, he wasn't capable of matching me and meeting me where I was at
Yeah.
to transform myself. The willingness to do the work was really low for him because he was dealing with so many demons in his
Yeah.
own space, in his own mind, in his own body. And so if we were to wait till both parties were healthy, that's why we have a really high divorce rate, because no two people are always going to be healthy at the exact same time to work on their marriage and rise
Yeah.
together. So I had to learn how to evoke change by showing up differently and being that change agent in my
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah. I mean, that example that you gave, where you've just spoken about your husband being in his addiction and depression,
Yeah.
I think that's a really good example, because
Mhm.
many people will think of the other example of what I said, where it takes two to make a relationship better at the same time. But as you said, both of you might not be ready at that same time. That
Yeah.
example of your husband is a perfect example. Your husband's going through things that he's battling, trying to deal with, and you're the other person in the relationship who has seen that things need to change, and you're the one that has taken that step to take action, which I
Yeah.
think is really great.
Yeah. And it's hard because most people don't understand that it can work that way. So they give up and they
Yeah,
say,
I didn't understand it could
well,
work that way, actually.
yeah. And
Yeah,
they say like, oh, well, he's never gonna get better and he's stuck, he's an addict, he's
yeah,
depressed, and I'm not responsible to fix him. And so they move on. And it's okay. I don't judge anyone who chooses to move on, because I think only you know what's best for you. And if they had this information, though, would they have made a different decision? And that's all I'm out to do, is create more awareness around people's options so
yeah.
that they don't think that the only option is to leave if they don't want to.
No, that's great.
That's where I want to step up and be a voice and an advocate, is if you don't want to give it. Most people, like, there's a large percentage of marriages that end not because they want it to end, but because they've run out of options and they don't know what else to do.
Yeah, I've seen that as well with some of the
Yeah.
articles that I've read around divorce. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people have said that they get to a certain stage and it's just a dead end.
Right.
They've tried everything in their relationship. They've tried marriage counseling. They've tried having space. They've tried so many things, but nothing has worked. And I
Yeah.
think that the option that you present through your inner mosaic method, especially
Mm-hmm.
as you have had experience, personal experience, I think that's
Yes.
what makes it really powerful. When
Yeah.
somebody has had personal experience of going through something and they have worked through it and had a transformation and a result, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
you've had. So I
Yes.
think that, you are very valid in all that you're sharing and all the work that you're doing. I think it's great.
Thank you.
So what are some of the common challenges you see in couples, what you see couples facing in today's society, and how does your book address them? So some of the challenges first, and then how your book helps to address some of those challenges.
I think the biggest challenge that's not spoken about is the misinformation that people have around relationships. So most couples seek support in their communication skills,
Yeah,
and they say, we're not communicating and we can't see eye to eye, and we're continuing to bump heads and be in conflict, and right, they're just angry and resentful towards one another, and they think they have a communication problem. Most people don't actually have an inability to communicate with another person. What they're lacking is their ability to communicate with themselves. And
yeah,
that's how the inner mosaic works, right? Because you're allowing yourself to have this internal dialogue and understand the different parts of yourself that's hurt, sad, mad, traumatized from past relationships.
yeah,
And when you're able to articulate that to your partner in a calm, like in a way that you're not triggered by them, right? Because that's what happens. It's one partner triggers the other person's trauma,
Yeah.
and then the other person triggers their trauma. And now we're in this back and forth ping pong match of trauma responses. And that really puts the relation, like, strain on the relationship. So when each partner can self-soothe, self-regulate, have higher emotional intelligence and ability to articulate how they really feel,
Yeah.
most of the conflicts dissolve. And it's
Okay.
no longer a communication issue.
Yeah.
And so that's how my book addresses this, is by allowing the individuals who are reading it to better understand themselves so they can better articulate to their spouse how they're feeling, what's going on for them, and no longer requesting things just to try to make it better.
Yeah.
If that does that make sense? Because
Yeah,
they're
of
like
course.
trying to make it better, and they're saying, I need you to do this. I need you to be more
Yeah.
attentive. You need to love me more. And that's not really the issue.
Yeah. No, I
Mhm.
understand it. Yeah, definitely. So can you share with us then a success story from your coaching practice that highlights the effectiveness of your methods? Have you got a particular couple in mind or a story that you can share with us quickly?
Yeah, I mean, there's many stories that come to mind, but there is one that I think really represents the work that I do, and it parallels and matches up perfectly with your podcast mission and message, which is, there was a woman who called me. I've been working with her now for over 2 years. And
Okay.
obviously, it's not just on her marriage now because she's come so far. Um, and no, you don't have to work on your marriage for 2 years, but we just enjoy working together and
Yeah.
growing together. But she came because her husband, he didn't cheat, but he engaged in activities that felt like a betrayal for her, and it was very close, in some people's minds would be considered cheating. And she was devastated. She was so broken, so lost. She just had a baby, and she didn't know what to do to save this relationship. And the work that we did together was to find herself, to
Yeah.
empower herself with her purpose, her passions, her likes and dislikes. We really went deep into discovering who she is as a mom, as a wife, as a daughter, as a friend, all of the above, and realized that she was actually in a really dark space, and it was just playing out in her marriage. And they
Yeah.
both were lost. And so we did the inner Mosaic work. We worked with her to transform her marriage, and now she just feels so empowered. She feel and her marriage isn't perfect, and none of
Yeah.
us will ever achieve perfection in our marriage, but she can with confidence show up to a disagreement and articulate how she truly feels. She can identify when her husband or herself is getting triggered and pause the conversation. She can handle, actually, even beyond her marriage. She had another child, so she has a daughter and a son now, and she's able to help her daughter emotionally regulate because now she's learned to do the same
Yeah.
in her most triggering relationship, which was her marriage, right? So it's just such a, I know people come to me for their marriage, but what they leave with is a greater understanding of self and this beautiful mosaic of all the different parts that make up who they are. And that is the ultimate goal. I say, whether you stay or leave, what we want for you is to learn how to become your best version of yourself.
Yeah.
And the quickest way to do it is in the relationship that triggers you the most, which is with your spouse. So
Yeah.
if nothing else, and that's what I said, right? I said to myself when I was in my dark night of my soul with my husband, and I found out he was he had an addiction and he was lying to me for 10 years. I said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to leave this marriage until I feel like a whole person.
Yeah.
And I will use, not use my husband, but basically use him as feedback to all the ways that I can work on myself. And that's what I did. And by the time I got to that place where I felt whole again, our marriage transformed.
Wow, that's
So my
great.
goal wasn't necessarily to save my marriage. My goal was
Yeah.
to feel whole and allow him to be my feedback, my greatest
Yeah.
teacher, my reflection. And by doing that, I became this, the version of myself that I became was light years away from where I was. And when I fell in love with myself again, he also fell in love with me again too.
Wow, that's actually really powerful. That last part as well, what you said about falling in love with yourself. I
Yeah.
think a lot of the time in relationships, whether people are married or not, I know obviously we talk a lot about married relationships, but obviously you've said about this is for relationships. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of the time in relationships, you can lose yourself. You always
Yes.
hear a lot of people, especially women, say that they feel lost. They don't know who they've become in a relationship and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that you mentioned about empowerment, because I think one of the things I learned during the course of my marriage, when I've had periods where I've not felt great in the relationship, is that I had to reclaim back my power. And how
Yes.
I started to do that is to work on myself and focus on myself. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes what happens when you're in a relationship is that you focus on the other person a lot more than yourself, and you
Yep.
focus on the relationship a lot more than yourself. Because obviously, if there's problems in the relationship, you're fixated on it, you're focused on it, and in that process you can lose yourself. So I
Yeah.
do think what you said, about being empowered and finding yourself in a relationship is very, very key to actually having a successful relationship. You have
Yeah.
to be able to know yourself and work on yourself and empower yourself, you know because before you got into a relationship, you were yourself, weren't you? You were
Yeah.
yourself. You
Well,
didn't.
and some people not so much. I mean, I was in
Yeah.
high school when I met my husband, so we spent years redefining ourselves and redefining. But yes,
Yeah.
most often people are themselves, and then they change once
Yeah.
they enter into the
Into a
relationship, and that's
relationship.
actually another huge problem out there right now is our codependency culture.
Yeah.
Our where we're subliminally and just culturally taught to, oh, they complete me. Oh, they're my better half. Oh, they're my partner
Yes.
in crime, my best friend.
Yeah.
And it gives us these subtle cues that, oh, we need to take care of each other and put each other first. When we never get told, put the oxygen mask on the person next to us first. We
Yeah.
always get told to put it on ourselves. And why
Yeah.
is it that in our relationships, we somehow lose that?
Yeah.
And it's when
That's
we
the
put it
thing.
back on ourselves that we can regain the healthy relationship that we want to be in. Right.
Yeah. No, you give really beautiful examples when you're sharing things, because
Oh,
it's
thank
helped
you.
me to see, like, some of the stuff that you said, like a lot of the stuff that you said, I've not thought about from this angle before. So it's
Yeah,
been really interesting to see and hear your examples. So would you say that your personal experiences influence the development of your coaching approach?
definitely. I didn't know what I was doing when I was attempting to save my marriage. And when I looked back on it about 6, 7 years later, I created my model almost in a backward sense, like looking back on it and saying,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is what worked. So, and then I had an experience about 2 years ago now that my husband hit another dark night of this. He hit his dark night of the soul, really, where his addiction came back, his depression came back, and it was full force. He was at a place where he said, I don't love you anymore. I don't want to be
Yeah.
with you anymore. I want more freedom. And this is a moment in time 2 years ago where I was the most secure and yeah, go do whatever. But I would demand healthy boundaries, right?
Yeah.
So I was requiring healthy communication. If you're going to say something, follow through. And in many ways, that didn't go well with the addiction in his mind. And so he hit that dark night, and I actually got to try on my principles that I teach
Yeah.
in real time this time, because I did it backwards the last time. So this
Yeah.
time I was like, oh my gosh, I can practice what I preach
Yeah.
in real time now. And so in a matter of 3 to 4 months, he, by me just staying true to my methods, true to what I teach, he began to come out of the fog and stop seeing me as the enemy, because I
Yeah.
was showing up in love, but also holding really firm boundaries, right? And in a sense of these, like, you do not put my children in danger.
Yeah.
If you do, I will be the person to monitor you with them, right? There were parameters that you weren't going to pass this boundary, but I will shower you with love here. If you're, I love you and you're doing your thing, okay, fine. And yeah, within 3 to 4 months, he saw me as an ally again. And within 6 months, we were back together, building our relationship, building our marriage back up. He was working on himself. And then within 9 months, we moved back in together. And
Yeah.
so I got to watch my model work in real time and in as quick as I could possibly do it. Not that I was trying to do it fast. I just was like, I'm just gonna do what I teach my clients to do and see what
Yeah.
happens. And again, we saved our marriage for the second time. And that was
Wow.
really cool to show our daughters, because our daughters were
Yeah.
so young the first time around. They don't remember. Only the oldest one remembered. And then this time they got to watch me and how I work and how I showed up. And that was a really cool experience for my daughters to witness.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Samantha, was there ever a time though? I mean, obviously you seem like a very strong woman, and I'm sure
Thank you.
obviously like all humans we have our moments of feeling, vulnerable and weak and everything. But was there ever a moment during, you know, the work that you've had to do, obviously with your relationship and being the one that instigates the work in the relationship, was there ever a moment where you actually felt like giving up?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I even there was a I'm very transparent and honest about what I go through in my marriage. And
Yeah.
so at that time, you can actually go look on my Instagram and watch. One of my friends and colleagues challenged me to go live every day for 5 days and just
Oh.
share what was happening in
Yeah.
my marriage. And I did. I was crying. I was like, this is hard.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. We sat down to sign divorce papers together. But that
Wow.
was the moment I
Mm.
realized how depressed and how lost he was. And
Yeah.
I knew that if I went through with this process, I would regret it, because he wasn't of sound mind to make this decision.
Mm.
And so I paused that process. With We both did, but I was like, I can't follow through yet until you're in a better space, and then we can continue this if that's what we want. But yeah, there were moments where I was like, I give up.
Yeah.
I I got nothing, right?
Yeah.
But that's where we allow ourselves to have the feelings we're having and say it's okay. It's okay to feel like giving up sometimes. It's okay to feel frustrated and annoyed. And there were moments I was just like, you suck. Like, grow up. You suck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
be my husband, because I don't want to be the adult for the rest of this relationship.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Right. And so there were lots of those moments. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And me
Uh,
throwing my version of adult tantrums too. Right.
yeah.
Because it's like, always have to be the one put together. Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah,
No, I think that's so true what you said, because a lot of women, and you know, and I know men go through it as well, but
yes,
obviously a lot of my listeners are women,
yeah,
and a lot of them are in relationships, whether they're married or in long-term relationships, where they are constantly having to be the one that does the work, constantly having to
right.
be the one that is the adult, you know, like you said, the one that
Yep.
is having to pull along a lot of things. And that's why I asked that question: is there moments where you just thought, oh, I can't be bothered? Because I know from my own experience, I've had moments like that myself. Relationships are never easy. um
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I think, just in listening to what you said as well, sometimes just thinking about some people that I know that have relationships,
Yeah.
over the course of the time that I've known people, some people, I feel, they feel that they are being taken advantage of by the other partner in the relationship, because the other partner knows that this partner is the one that's always going to sort everything out, show up,
Mhm.
sort out appointments, you know, whether it's for going relationship counseling and different things like that. And all they have to do is just be. All they
Right.
have to do is just show up.
Yes.
And yeah, I asked that question because obviously, you know, you are a very intelligent and capable woman, you know, and
Yeah.
has put together this really fantastic method to help people. And I just wanted to know that if there were those moments where, even though, you know, you're doing all this great work, if you actually feel, actually, I can't actually be bothered, you know,
Yeah.
because it just feels so
Yeah. No, yeah,
exhausting.
there were definitely those moments. And what I've learned over time is
Yeah.
to let go of control. There,
Mm.
I was that woman that took care of everything. I took care of the bills. Like, he worked, gave me the
Yeah.
paycheck, I distribute the money,
Yeah.
set up all the doctor's appointments for the kids, like everything. I just
Yeah.
did it because it needed to be done. And did I like to do it? No. I didn't
And
want
of
to do
course,
it.
the relationship stuff as well. On top of that, you know, when things were
Yeah,
going
and
wrong in the
working on the
relationship. Yeah.
relationship.
Mm.
Yes. However, I knew that that was the codependency culture we fell into. And so
Okay.
I needed to learn how to let go to a point where, okay, will anyone die if I don't do this?
Yeah.
And if the answer was no, then I let it go. And he's like, oh, the car registration, my car registration didn't get paid. Okay, well,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
it's really, it's a two-sided challenge, right?
Yeah.
If you're the one taking care of everything and they're the one that will just let it go till you take care of it, our role as the caretakers is to let it fall away
Yeah.
until they pick up the pieces too. And so now we have much more shared roles in our
Yeah.
marriage because he's like, but I don't know how to do that. I'm like, okay, well, you're going to learn because I'm not doing
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
And he did. He did. Once
Yeah.
I let go and let some things, we failed. There was a lot of things that like fell through the cracks because I
Yeah.
wasn't doing it. And it was just part of that learning curve for him and for
Yeah.
me. So for those that are listening that
Yeah.
are that woman, it sucks and it's super scary at times because you're like, but I don't want to pay a fee. I don't want to pay a late fee. I don't want to
Yeah.
pay, or I don't want this I don't want to be a bad parent. I don't want to miss the
Yeah.
doctor's appointment. I don't want, and it's really just checking in with ourselves is is anyone going to die? And if the
Yeah.
answer is no, then we can let this one go. And then it's also saying, who are we doing this for?
Yeah.
And if we're doing it for our partners, we will always resent them. But I check in with myself and I say, no, I'm not doing this for him. What
Yeah.
I did, like who I did that for, all that personal development work was my daughters and me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Because
said,
you
I
said it.
am not letting them grow up to see another
Yeah.
dysfunctional relationship. No.
Yeah. No, and I think that's admirable, because a lot of the time we never think about how our relationships will affect our children. You know,
Right.
that they're watching, that they're learning, that they're taking things in. And also I really like the fact that, you know, in you saying that, letting things fall through the gaps and just, letting things be. It is about taking back your power. And
Yes.
it's about self-empowerment and self-love, I think, as well.
Yes.
Would you say that, in your opinion, that self-love then is an important part of healthy relationships? Because a lot of the time in those things, why people just go along in relationships, and these are just my observations and things I know from personal experience, because obviously
Yeah.
being a wife and a mother and being married, this is not my first relationship. So there's things that I've learned along the way. When you
Right.
don't have that self-love, when the self-love is not there, it is very easy to let all these other things pile up on top of you.
Yes. So did you watch the series Bridgerton?
No, I've heard a lot about
Okay.
it, and I should know,
I
shouldn't I, over here in England?
Well, I mean, it was I resisted it for so long, and then my oldest daughter was like, "You have to watch." And
Yeah,
I got hooked on it and I watched. So I think it's like the second to the last episode in this last season.
yeah,
One of the characters say, "You can never know true love until you learn how to truly love yourself," right?
yes, yeah,
So, or truly accept and love and embrace yourself. And I didn't say that like verbatim, but that's the essence of what she said. And it's like so true. You can't know true love in a relationship outside of yourself before you truly embrace the truth of who you are
yeah.
inside.
It's back to
So,
that empowerment thing, isn't it? It's about that
yeah.
empowerment thing and getting to know how to love, learn to love yourself. And like you said before in the interview, all those
Mhm.
different parts of ourselves that we need to get to know, in order to be
Yes.
able to truly love ourselves.
The ones that we keep in the closet, that we hide in the trunk, those are the ones that we need to learn to love in order to truly receive the love and give the love in our
Yeah,
relationships that we want. And ultimately, I like to say that the highest form of self love is actually self trust.
yeah,
So when we trust all parts of ourselves, that really unlocks this ability to embrace loving ourselves.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's always a journey, but it's an important journey, because obviously
Yes.
having the key to within yourself to know how to love yourself and get to know yourself, it does take time, but it's a form of power. And this
Yes.
is what this podcast is all about. It's about empowerment. Relationships for a lot of people take up a lot of their life, and
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily in a good way.
No,
They've just
we're
become,
misguided. So it really consumes us in the wrong ways most of the
yes,
time.
exactly.
Yeah.
That brings me on to another part of relationships that's always a tricky part, um, a tricky place to be in.
Yeah.
Forgiveness. Obviously,
Mm,
in relationships, there is conflict, there is arguments.
yes.
Uh, Things in arguments get said. Uh, how many arguments have we all had where we've said things, or the partner has said things that has cut to the core?
Yeah.
But it's the anger response. It's trying to. I don't know if it's get one over on each other in an argument, but it's really not nice.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when things get said, it can be very difficult to forget,
Yes.
even after the argument has subsided and that's all over with.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness is often easier said than done.
Yes.
So, what advice would you give to the listeners who are struggling to forgive their partners or themselves?
Yeah. One of my mentors once told me all forgiveness is self forgiveness. And that really struck a chord with me because I was like, well, what about when he did
Yeah,
this and that and all the things? And it it's so true though, right? It really is about forgiving ourselves for allowing that boundary to be broken, forgiving ourselves for not watching and looking at the red flags, forgiving ourselves for staying in that argument for too long when we knew we should have walked away.
Yeah.
half an hour ago, right? So there is always this element of self-forgiveness. And I know there's so many different practices that we can engage in to put on, right, and lean into forgiveness. But one of the things that I love to remind myself is it's a practice. It's not one and
Yeah.
done. It's like brushing our teeth. it it's a daily hygiene
Yeah.
practice. That really is what forgive. So if you
It
say
is.
I forgave someone, and then a week later you're in an argument and you feel that anger rising up again, well, did you do it every day for the last week? Right?
Yeah.
No, probably not. You weren't practicing forgiveness. And when we don't practice it, our muscles weaken and atrophy, and we get a little right,
Yeah.
we get tired faster. And so it's, how are we engaging in a forgiveness practice on a regular basis? It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be every day, but are we
Yeah.
checking in with ourselves once a week or once a month or once a quarter at the very least, right? To say, where in my life can I forgive myself and I can forgive others?
Yeah, I think with forgiveness, for me, I mean, I'm a Christian, so forgiveness for me is a central part of my faith.
Yeah.
And I've always known, well, not always known, I've come to know that forgiveness is not a feeling, it is an act.
Yes.
So
Yes.
for me, I've had plenty of situations in my life, in other relationships with my mom, my dad, um, obviously in my marriage, where I've had to practice forgiveness
Hmm.
because, and it's really hard to do when you're hurt.
Yes.
It's really hard to do because automatically when somebody has hurt you by something they've done or said, automatically there's this automatic feeling of a grudge
Hmm.
that we might not necessarily recognize it as a grudge, but it's that thought, that feeling of, I have, you remember it and it brings back
Yeah.
that feeling, and it's like a grudge. So
And
for
it's a,
me,
oh, sorry, keep going.
no,
Finish
no,
what
I
you're
was
saying.
just going to say that for me, forgiveness is an act, and one of the things
Yeah.
that helps me to forgive is to know God has forgiven me for the things that I've done, and it's a free gift that He's given me, and I
Hmm.
extend that gift to those who have hurt me. And it's not easy, but it's more than feelings, because I think a lot of the time we can allow feelings to become the ultimate thing in our lives. I feel like this,
Right.
and nothing else matters as much as my feelings, or
Right.
but forgiveness is above feelings, because actually it says, regardless of how I feel, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to forgive you. And
Yeah.
sooner or later, our actions, and this is just from my personal experience, the actions that I've had when I've forgiven, even at the time where I've still been hurt, and said I forgive somebody, because it's not for their benefit that I'm forgiving them, it's to
No.
release me.
Yes.
It's my
100.
empowerment. So
Yeah.
I've realized that when I forgive, even if I forgive in a place where I'm still hurt, after a while, my feelings start to match up, start to line up with my act of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
and the reason why it does that is because we learn in psychology, and it's not taught in general, but I think it needs to
yeah,
be, is that our thoughts cause our
yeah,
feelings cause our actions, and our actions cause our results. And so if we want to change the feeling, all we need to do is change the thinking, the thought that we're having about the situation.
yeah,
And forgiveness is giving one perception, one story, one belief for another. Forgiveness. Giving up, you're giving one belief up for another.
yeah,
That's all that forgiveness is. We're choosing to tell ourselves a different story. And it could be, my faith teaches me to forgive without cause, without reason. I
yeah,
forgive. I pass on the gift that I was given, and I
yeah,
forgive. And that is a belief that allows you to transmute your feelings, to
yeah,
shift out of that anger and resentment. And that's how we change the feeling,
yeah,
is by changing the story, changing the thinking, and we're giving up one belief for another. And that's
Yeah.
really the essence of the forgiveness practice that many of us aren't taught growing up,
Yeah.
right?
So the one thing you would say then to somebody who's trying to start their journey on forgiveness when something comes
Mhm.
up, what's the one tip you would give them then?
I know this sounds not related, but it's the one thing that I think if I were to reduce everything down and say, what is that one thing that saved your
Yeah.
marriage? It was my gratitude practice. And
Yeah.
finding gratitude in every moment of your life allows you to get out of victimhood. It allows you to move into this higher frequency, this greater space of love, and to see things from a perspective of, there's a quote, another quote, sorry, I like quotes obviously,
That's okay.
from A Course in Miracles, and it says every act is either a call for love or an expression of love, no matter how unskilled it may seem. And so, if you can take on that belief through the form of gratitude, like I'm just grateful that I have my daughters, I'm grateful I'm alive today, I'm grateful that I have family and friends, and then put on that belief that every act is either a call for love, like asking for love, or an expression. And sometimes it's just really, really unskilled. Then we begin to see life in a whole new light in our marriage, in our relationship, and the people. Like,
And that,
oh, they were hurt and they were saying those things to ask for love in an
right.
unskilled way. Oh,
Yeah.
and I can still honor that that sucked and that hurt, right? And but we don't have to also in an unskilled way
Yeah.
ask for love too, right? That's where it goes
Yeah.
back and forth.
Okay. So
But
that's something that you feel will help people on the path to learning forgiveness.
yeah, so
Yeah.
understanding that it every act's a call for love or expression of love, no matter how unskilled it is, and also having a really strong gratitude practice day in and day out. I actually wrote 3 things I was grateful for my husband every morning,
Yeah.
as well as 3 things I was grateful for my husband before every argument.
Oh, so that's the key. That is the key. So, listeners, that's something that you can apply if before it probably even gets to a stage of arguing, just having that gratitude practice of writing 3 things about your partner, your husband, that you are grateful for about them. I think that is something that is actually really good. You know, it's a really
Yes.
good, because obviously in the moment when you're having that argument, it's like you can see the worst about that person
Yes.
in that moment, and having that practice of doing that and referring to it when needed, it will help you to keep everything in perspective. Like, it was an
Yes.
argument, things were
And
said.
it prevents the additional hurt that happens, because
Yeah.
I say that my weapon are my words. Like I can cut
Yeah.
deep with words, right? And
Yeah.
so can he knows how to cut deep
Yeah.
with his words too. But when we start any argument with gratitude,
Yeah.
we're speaking now from this place of connection, compassion, and really just getting into the hurt
Yeah.
versus the anger. And that makes a huge difference on it really is about stopping the future hurt and then learning how, because you can't forgive someone if you keep hurting each other every day and adding more hurt and
Yeah.
attack
There's
to the
resentful.
relationship. Yeah,
Yeah.
so in order to begin the practice of forgiveness and do that more than hurt, is we need to show up differently, show up in gratitude, show up in love moving forward, right? Yeah.
No, that's good advice. I never really subscribed to that saying sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I
Yeah.
never really understood that.
It hurts. They hurt really
Yeah,
bad.
words will hurt you for a long time. There are people out there that words have been said to them in their relationship years ago. I mean, we see it with sometimes even children. They remember something their parents said to them that cut them, and as adults, they still remember it. So words have the power to cut really, really, really deep. So that was saying, I never quite understood it, but
Oh, and it was backwards.
Yeah, it was. It should have been the other way round. Um, how can individuals distinguish between intuition and fear when making decisions about their relationship? So just something quickly
Yeah,
that they
really
could do.
simple. Okay,
Mm,
so I know many people tap into their intuition through their gut feeling, right? Or their solar plexus if people talk about the energy systems, but in their gut they feel this feeling, and many people contribute that to their intuition. I actually contribute that to fear.
yeah,
When there's like this sinking feeling or this nervousness, you feel it in your gut.
yeah,
And so I attribute that to fear. When you're following your intuition, most often, I won't say every time, you'll feel this calm confidence.
mm,
And it's it's not that it's not scary all the time, because sometimes your intuition leads you to make some scary decisions,
mm,
but there's this knowingness, this calmness that comes over you that says this is the right thing to do, right?
yeah,
And if you follow the Christian faith, and your listeners do as well, this would be that if you've ever heard the Holy Spirit speak to you, it's really this calm but very certain, this confident voice. And it's
yeah,
not like audible, but just the
yeah,
energy of it, right? Like you just
yeah,
know. And it's just, this is what you need to do.
yeah,
That's your intuition speaking to you. The fear is frantic and
yeah,
worried and forced and, oh my gosh, we have to, that's fear.
yeah,
So
yeah. I
that's
think
my discern.
no, I think that's a really good way of describing between fear and making the decisions not based on fear but from a different place.
Yes.
I think that's really important as well for people to consider. So, what do you hope the audience will take away from your book, Finding Beauty in Your Broken Pieces?
Yeah, that there is beauty in all the parts of ourselves, and the magic that happens. And I say it because I don't have any other word. It's just the miracles that show up in our life when we identify all the parts of ourselves as beautiful.
Yeah,
It just, life unfolds before us in such a miraculous way. And so that's what I would want for each and every one of my readers, is to find the beauty in all of their brokenness, so that they too can experience the miracles that I've experienced in my marriage, but not only that, in just life in general. Just so many
yeah.
different beautiful things have emerged from embracing and loving myself.
And where can the listeners find your book? I will leave links, guys, to where you can find Samantha's Instagram and her book. Would you like to just tell the listeners where we can find the book?
Yeah, they can go to Amazon or Barnes and Nobles or any one of the major booksellers online. They should be able to look it up there, or they can go to my website, and we'll drop that in the show notes as well.
Yes,
But
I will.
it's
Yeah.
thegems.com, and there's links to buy my book on there as well.
Thank you, Samantha. So, guys, what I will do is to put all the links to Samantha's social media, books, her website for you guys to check out for yourself. And I have two other questions for you, Samantha.
Sure.
First of all, what's next for you on your journey as a marriage coach and author?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I don't really often get asked that. I'm actually going to be launching my own podcast
Oh, fantastic.
in a little while. I won't set a date yet. There's a few episodes that need to get recorded before that launch date,
Yeah.
but it's going to be called Marriage Mind Shifts, and I'm going to help
Yeah.
women and men too, but mainly women, to
Mm.
transform their beliefs around marriages so that they too can transform their relationships in their life. So that's the next thing on the horizon.
Oh, well, I'll be definitely looking out for that. That sounds really
Thank
good and a
you.
very catchy name as well. Marriage Minds,
Thank-
was it Mind Shifts?
Mind shifts.
Yeah, that's a catchy name as well. So,
Thank you.
yeah, I think you'll do great at that. I think, just from listening to you during the course of this interview, it's very clear to me that you really know what you're talking about.
Um,
You know, there's been some things that you've said that's going to make me go away and have a think. And I am going to actually buy your book because
oh,
I want to be able to actually sit with what you've told me today in this interview and, you know, be able to read it and think about it in a bit more detail. So, I'm really glad that I've, you know, had you on the show as a guest and come across you to be able to know that, there is this knowledge and advice out there,
yeah.
um, and in a different way as well. So, thank you very much, Samantha.
Thank
Thank
you,
you very
Yvonne. It was
much.
such a pleasure. I feel like we could talk for hours.
Oh, most definitely, most definitely.
Yeah.
And what I like to do as we end, I always ask my guests, what one thing would you say to the listeners that you can give them to encourage them to live an empowered life?
Oh, love and embrace all parts of yourself and listen and really give yourself that space to be free, to be seen, to be heard. Um, and I think that in and of itself is the essence of empowerment, is just learning to love and embody and embrace all the beautiful parts of you.
Oh, thank you. What a beautiful way to finish. So there it is, guys. I will be posting all the links to Samantha's stuff, as I said, in the show notes. Samantha, I just want to thank you again for agreeing to come on the podcast, even though our time differences are very, very
I know
varied.
I'm so thrilled that we actually made it work.
Yeah, most definitely. So you'll be getting ready to go to bed soon, and I'm getting
Yes,
ready to start my day. So,
yes.
well, thank you very much, Samantha. And I look
Thank you,
forward,
Yvonne.
guys, to hearing your thoughts on this episode. I think within the show notes now they have I think it's like a message box where listeners can post their thoughts on each
Nice.
episode. So, guys, do use that facility. I would love to read some of your feedback about this interview. What are your thoughts? And yeah, look out for the episodes that are upcoming, and I will see you in the next one. All the links to everything will be in the show notes. Take care.